I want to give birth in my hometown. Hey sis, could you please leave soon? One day after work, I came home to find my sister, who had gotten married and moved out years ago, in my room. She was proudly showing off her pregnant belly, but I was too surprised to say anything. I stood there in shock while she laughed at me. You're just in the way since you can't even get a boyfriend. An old maid like you should be grateful, she sneered. To make it easier for her to leave my room, which used to be normal before I left for work in the morning, I threw away everything that was in there. Now, my room was completely empty. The bed, table, rug, curtains, all gone. The only thing left was my sister standing in the middle of the room. Your phone and wallet are in your bag, right? So you won't end up broke. It's time for you to stop relying on our parents and start living on your own. Yeah, I didn't think about getting my stuff back or kicking my sister out. I just didn't want to see her anymore. That's all. As I walked away, I could hear my sister burst out laughing, unable to hold it in any longer. You can't even say anything back at this point. Aren't you too weak? She mocked. Ignoring her, I kept walking down the hallway. My dad was on the phone in the living room, and my mom was probably making dinner, their voices cheerful and humming behind me. I walked out the front door, taking in the night air, adjusting my bag on my shoulder as I headed towards the street where there were many hotels. Suddenly, I realized something. I wondered who would pay the mortgage on the house from now on. Oh well, never mind. I'm Julia, a 27-year-old office worker. I have a stable job, but also do video editing, web writing, and blog management on the side. People might say 27 is old enough to start thinking about marriage, but I'm not too focused on love and marriage. Part of the reason is that my sister was treated like a princess at home, which made me feel left out by my family. This has kept me from really wanting to start my own happy family. I've always lived with my parents, and household chores are supposed to be shared with my mom. But in reality, I end up doing most of them. My mom comes back exhausted from her part-time job, and seeing her like that makes me feel like I should be the one handling the chores. Since becoming a working adult, I've been contributing a lot to the household expenses, much more than what my friends who live alone in Tokyo pay. I'm more of an indoor person who enjoys studying and didn't go out much even during my student days, so I didn't have many desires for material things and ended up saving most of the money I earned. Even after starting work, I didn't spend much on myself and gave more money for household expenses, thinking it would help my parents. Furthermore, since last year, I've been helping with the mortgage payments at my parents' request. They seem to think it's okay for me to contribute more to the household and mortgage payments because I have a steady income and am responsible. However, I feel like my parents aren't very interested in me because their attention has always been on my sister Kristen, who is a year younger than me. Kristen is outgoing and active. She used to go out somewhere every weekend during her student days. Naturally, my parents thought her lifestyle required money, so even when she lived at home, they never asked her to contribute to the mortgage or household expenses. It seems my parents have gotten used to thinking of me, the older sister, as low maintenance, while my sister requires more attention. Recently, my sister moved out to live on her own. Her workplace wasn't far from our parents' home, and when I asked her why she decided to live alone, she said, I wanted to try living by myself. I want to go out at night and be able to invite my boyfriend over. This answer was far from what I had imagined. I thought she moved out to make things easier for our parents or to become independent. On the other hand, I had no intention of leaving our parents' house and believed it was natural to help each other out as a family, even if it meant contributing more to the living expenses. Then, after a while, when I returned home, my sister was waiting for me saying, Welcome back, sis. I often feel like my parents are more interested in my younger sister Kristen than in me. Kristen is outgoing and active, always going out on weekends during her student days. Because of her lifestyle, my parents assumed she needed more financial support, so they never asked her to contribute to household expenses or the mortgage when she lived at home. It seems my parents have been conditioned to see me, the older sister, as low maintenance, while my sister gets more attention. Recently, Kristen moved out to live on her own, not far from our parents' home. When I asked her why she wanted to live alone, she said, "I wanted to try living by myself. I want to go out at night and be able to invite my boyfriend over." This answer was far from what I expected. I thought maybe she wanted to make things easier for our parents or become more independent. On the other hand, I never planned to leave our parents' house and believed it was natural to support each other as a family, even if it meant contributing more to household expenses. Then, when I returned home later on, my sister was waiting for me and said, "Welcome back, sis. I'm getting married and we'll have a dinner party. So both families can meet each other. Can you come to the party?" My sister mentioned the party would be at a well-established restaurant in LA and emphasized wearing proper clothes, not my usual plain ones, so she wouldn't be embarrassed. Even though I didn't own any fancy clothes, I decided to attend in my usual suit. It was the most respectful attire I had. My sister's fiancé seemed sincere and was very polite. He made a good impression by saying, "Nice to meet you, sister-in-law. I look forward to getting along." I thought my sister had chosen a good partner for herself. Maybe with him, she might settle down a bit. I thought in a sisterly way. Initially, the atmosphere between both families was formal and tense, but as alcohol was served, the tension eased, and conversation shifted to discussing children after marriage. Our eldest daughter, Julia, is almost 30 and still unmarried without any plans to marry, so it looks like we'll only be able to see grandchildren from our younger daughter, Kristen. My parents said eagerly, "We're looking forward to it so much. I want to have children right after getting married, maybe 3, Kristen said, and the conversation became lively. Suddenly, I noticed my sister's husband had a forced smile, looking uncomfortable, as if his earlier cheerful smile was a lie. I felt he was also uncomfortable, just like me. I wished the party would end soon. Since then, my parents started doting on my sister, as if she were an investment for their first grandchild. Whenever my sister mentioned that eating certain foods would make it easier to get pregnant, my parents would immediately agree and urge Kristen to eat a lot. "There might be a chance I can't get pregnant because of tight clothes," she said one day, and they rushed to a department store to buy her a dress. "If you visit this church, you'll be blessed with children," they said, and they even went on a trip together. My parents doing whatever my sister said was usual for me, so I didn't think much of it other than, they're doing their usual thing. One day, my sister made a sarcastic remark to me about not getting married or showing any effort to give our parents a grandchild. "It must be nice being carefree and single. Aren't you planning to get married and move out soon? With that plain face of yours, no man would come near you. You need a bit more sex appeal. Should I teach you how to do your makeup?" She laughed. Her words irritated me, but I knew arguing back would only lead to a fight, so I stayed silent. My sister has always been confident that she's more loved by our parents than I am, and she often speaks to me in a strong tone. Then, one day, my sister got pregnant. I wondered if she could truly become a mother, but I thought maybe it would be okay with her husband. My sister said, "Since I'm pregnant, I don't want to cause trouble at work and I want to focus on parenting," and she easily quit her job. However, her husband thought that solely parenting on his salary wouldn't be practical, but my sister didn't listen and quit her job anyway. One day, when I returned from work, I noticed my room's door was slightly open, which seemed out of place since I'm quite meticulous about keeping it closed. At 4 o'clock, I'm meticulous about keeping everything neat. Closets and drawers are always closed, especially my room's door. My parents wouldn't have come in to clean because I handle all the cleaning myself. Nervously, I'd opened the door to my room and was shocked. There was nothing inside. I didn't have many belongings, but I kept things precious to me since childhood in labeled storage boxes stored in the closet. Gone were my electronic dictionary, my grandparents' gifted commuter pass case, my diplomas, trophies, and albums, old and worn out, but precious to me. Standing bewildered in the empty room, I heard a familiar voice from behind. "Oh, you're back. Sis, I decided to come home for my childbirth," looking at my sister's face as she spoke with a laugh. I immediately knew she must have moved my things. "Kristen, where did you put my stuff? In the closet?" I asked in a panic. But my sister, still laughing, said, "What's the rush? It wasn't anything important, right? Just junk." Being told my precious belongings were junk made anger well up inside me. "It might be junk to you, but it's important to me. Give it back now." It's insane to move all someone's belongings out when they're not home. Surprised at the first time she saw me raise my voice, she blurted out, "I've already thrown it away." In my 27 years of life, I had never been this angry. It was outrageous to throw away someone's belongings without permission. "Put everything back right now," I demanded. But my sister unapologetically said, "It's already been taken by the garbage truck. I can't give them back." She looked at me with disdain and added, "What's the big deal? You're getting so angry over some junk. Are you crazy? Don't yell like that. It's bad for the baby," ostentatiously rubbing her belly. Then she continued, "I've decided to live here even after the baby is born. It seems tough after childbirth, and Mom and Dad want to see their grandchild every day. Matt plans to stay here too, so it's too small with just my room. That's why I decided to use your room too. You understand, right? You're such a filial piety failure." I was utterly astounded by her selfish behavior. Going to our parents' home for childbirth is supposed to be a temporary return, but living here with her husband and child is simply cohabitation, isn't it? And then to unilaterally label someone as a failure in filial piety. My anger bubbled up. "Do you even realize you're being a failure in filial piety, staying at home without getting married, and as the eldest daughter, not even bringing in a son-in-law? I'll show them a grandchild's face and create a life where we can live together and see each other every day. Who do you think is doing more for our parents?" She was unilaterally declaring as if it were all my fault, but there was no way I could just sit back and listen to her. "If you want to live in this house as a family, that's something the whole family should discuss, especially since you want to use my room. You should have said something sooner if you had a set date for returning." At that point, my sister interrupted by banging loudly on my room's door. "Shut up. See, you're always like this, making a fuss. That's why I made it, so you have no choice but to leave. It's annoying." That sounded like mere lashing out. Trying to use someone's room without permission and having thrown out the current resident's belongings. Yet she spoke as if she were the victim. Kristen banged on the door over and over again. "You're in the way. Leave. Don't ever come back." I was beyond flabbergasted. "Then, as you wish, I'll just leave. I don't have any belongings left. No need to pack." My immense anger had now turned into sheer astonishment. I even felt like I never wanted to see her again. I turned around and headed straight for the entrance. My parents didn't seem to notice me returning and immediately leaving through the front door. My father was probably bragging on the phone to a relative about his pregnant daughter coming home to live with them permanently. My mother seemed to be in the kitchen, possibly making my sister's favorite dish, humming a tune. I wasn't living with my family expecting anything in return. The difference in how my sister and I were treated since childhood. I thought it was because she was good at charming our parents, and that was okay. But even after growing up and taking on most of the household responsibilities, this was how I was treated, despite allocating most of my salary to living expenses and the house's mortgage. Yet my sister, who never contributed a penny, was welcomed with open arms. The negative aspects of my parents I had tried not to see, combined with my sister's behavior, morphed into contempt. Without saying "I'm leaving" or "goodbye," I opened the front door. Until that door closed, neither my parents nor my sister said anything to me. Then, a week later at the end of the month, which was payday, I usually transferred living expenses and the mortgage payment to my father's account. But I didn't make the deposit since I don't live there anymore. I don't see why I should pay the mortgage for a house I'm not living in. The housing mortgage was originally taken out by my father, so it was supposed to be planned in such a way that he could comfortably repay it from his income. The household shouldn't become unsustainable just because I stopped making deposits. However, a little while later, I got a call from my mother. Right off the bat, she said, "Julia, we've received a notice for unpaid mortgage." When I checked, there was no money in my father's account. She rattled on before I could even answer, clearly in a panic. "Julia, do you know why this happened? Don't tell me you withdrew it." In contrast to her frantic tone, I answered calmly, "All I did was stop making deposits. I didn't withdraw anything. If there's an unpaid mortgage, it means the withdrawal couldn't be made, right? Did you make sure there was enough balance on the withdrawal date? You didn't make a deposit." "Why?" She sounded genuinely puzzled. So I became just as confused because it was agreed that I contribute to the living expenses and the mortgage since I was living at home. Once I left, I obviously wouldn't continue to pay, right? I don't live there anymore. It seemed to finally dawn on her as I heard her gasp softly. "So, you don't need to pay the living expenses." "You're right, but could you still contribute to the mortgage? Even living on your own, you should have some leeway, right?" "Sorry, but I can't. My current rent alone is $5,000. I'm stretched thin as it is covering my own living costs, let alone paying for a mortgage on a house I'll never return to." $5,000? You're just an ordinary employee. How could you afford such a place? Hearing my mother's astonished voice, I sighed. That's the same amount I used to give home every month. Asking such a thing now, it's clear you never really cared about me. If that's the case, I can't discuss money with you any further. I'm not your personal ATM. I could hear my mother whimpering over the phone. No, she repeated, her voice thinner than I had ever heard. I felt no pity. A month had passed since I left quietly, yet there was no concern over my well-being. Only about the mortgage and living expenses, my rent, only money. It painfully highlighted that their interest was not in me but in my money. That's why I hadn't felt compelled to share that I was extensively freelancing online, making far more than my father's monthly salary. The house mortgage still has 15 years left, so I was depositing $5,000 every month, including savings. It seems my mother mistook it as my father's income. Given his age and years of service, her assumption was understandable, yet she never noticed the exact amount deposited every month. A glance at my father's payslip would have clarified the discrepancy. Ultimately, my mother didn't care about the source of the money, which is why she failed to notice when the monthly income halved, leading to a shortage and subsequent mortgage payment failures only noticed when prompted by a notice. When the absence was finally felt, she acted in a manner so typical of her, I could only offer a faint smile. Lately, she had been indulging my sister's demands for expensive baby items, further straining their finances. "But without your contributions, we can't make ends meet. Could you send some money as remittance?" "I've told you I can't. Why don't you ask Kristen to contribute a bit for living expenses? If that's not enough, maybe you should increase your part-time work." As I conveyed this, my mother's shriek pierced my ears. "Kristen just had a baby. How can I work more and leave her alone with the baby? Are you suggesting Kristen should work too? How could you say such awful things?" I clarified, that's not what I meant. If Kristen and Matt as a couple are going to live at Mom and Dad's house, then they should be contributing some amount towards the living expenses. I did the same, didn't I? And isn't Matt still working? Yet you're planning to live together without contributing anything. After calmly responding to avoid provoking my mother, silence followed. Staying there just temporarily might be fine, but Kristen said she plans to live there forever, and Dad seems to think the same. So it would be better for everyone living together from now on to discuss how to handle finances and share the burden. I've already left the house, so I can't be part of that discussion. Waiting a bit for a response that never came, I then said, "I'm going to hang up now. I don't plan on contacting you guys anymore. So after I hang up, I'll block you, Dad, and Kristen's numbers. You guys can delete my contact information too. Bye." With that, I ended the call. The last thing I heard was a bewildered ha from my mother. Before another call from my mother could come in, I quickly navigated my phone to block all three of them. After completing the settings, I took several deep breaths and moved closer to the living room window. From this 25th floor apartment, I couldn't see people outside without looking down. After leaving my family home, I moved into what's known as a high-rise apartment. In fact, my side income had significantly increased, allowing me to save tens of thousands every month, even after transferring $5,000 to my family. Remembering my mother, who would spend whatever money she had, I felt relieved I hadn't suggested using my savings to pay off the mortgage in full. After all, my parents wanted me out. Kristen, being heavily pregnant, couldn't possibly have moved my bed and table on her own. Someone definitely helped her. While it might have been Matt, I would like to think he wouldn't partake in moving all belongings from a lived-in room. Either way, such a significant move would have been noticed by my parents. I was the only one who went out for work that day, and they were home all day, yet they said nothing when I returned and ignored me even as I was leaving. Whether they were persuaded by Kristen or not, it was clear my parents had a part in wanting me out. Feeling this betrayal, I decided then to give up everything and leave. Had I paid off the mortgage in full, the three of them would have lived comfortably in a spacious home. I could not allow that to happen, so I chose the high-rise apartment for my new home. I remember when we used to gather around the TV as a family dreaming about living in such a place. My decision to live in a high-rise apartment out of spite turned out to be far more comfortable than expected. My chosen furniture, a space undisturbed by anyone, and the freedom to live off my earnings brought me immense satisfaction. Making my potentially struggling mother believe I was living in a luxurious home felt exhilarating. I may have bragged a bit too much about paying $5,000 in rent, but my mother never noticed. Moreover, getting along well with my neighbors on the same and adjacent floors was a delight. Contrary to my expectations of encountering boastful conversations about income or car ownership, everyone was humble, making for a pleasant living environment. 3 months later, my peaceful life was disrupted as I left the office. Kristen approached me from behind. "Sis, there's something I need to talk to you." Her lips trembled as she spoke, her appearance rougher than a year ago, likely due to childbirth and parenting, yet her charm remained, drawing attention from my colleagues and employees from other companies as they passed by. "Sorry, but I have plans afterward. If it's about the house, talk to Mom." I attempted to gently remove Kristen's hand. Her eyes began to well up with tears on the verge of crying, drawing some cold stares from the people around. It would be troublesome to be seen as heartless for rejecting her harshly in public. Reluctantly, I faced Kristen and suggested heading to a cafe near the station, to which she happily agreed. "Actually, I've been having an affair. Matt found out, and now he wants a divorce." This was the statement she blurted out the moment we sat down in the cafe. It felt like something out of a drama. He had the baby's DNA tested without my knowledge. It turns out Matt isn't the father. He's furious and talking about divorce. Kristen spoke in a hushed tone, aware of the sensitivity of the topic. But I was overwhelmed by the succession of shocking revelations. He doesn't want custody since it's not his child. He's talking about filing something to terminate the parent-child relationship. I didn't understand all he said, but he's refusing to give us any money, insisting on suing for compensation. "You're wealthy, right? Please do something." Perhaps this is what it means to be utterly speechless. My sister cheated, so it's natural she would be sued for compensation. And of course, no one would want to pay child support for a child that isn't theirs. I couldn't comprehend the nerve of my sister coming to me for a solution. "Why don't you ask the person you cheated with to pay the compensation to you?" "I can't do that. It was just a fling because I found him attractive, and after a few dates and finding out about the baby, I cut ties." "You thought that wouldn't come out." "I thought Matt would forgive me." It seems she underestimated her own husband to a remarkable extent. Though I knew my sister was selfish, I was astonished to see she treated even her loved ones this way. Then Matt didn't forgive me at all. Instead, he said he's been hating how I acted like a princess all along and that the pressure from our parents to have children was unbearable. Terrible, isn't it? Even being blamed like this, my sister still finds a way to play the victim. "I can't pay the compensation. And Mom and Dad say they have no money, so you have to pay it, Julia." She naively assumed it was a given that I would pay, just like she thought it was okay to throw out all my belongings, labeling them junk. I was profoundly disgusted by her sense of entitlement, that someone would always bail her out. Without hiding my revulsion, I stood up to leave, and Kristen quickly turned pale, grabbing my hand with both of hers. "I understand. I'll apologize. I'm sorry for throwing out your stuff without asking. I've apologized." "So we're good now, right? Please give me the money quickly," she said, tilting her head slightly and using a sweet voice that sent shivers down my spine. I shook off her hand in disgust. "Are you stupid? Why should I pay for the consequences of your affair? It doesn't matter if we're sisters. I hate you. I despise you as a person. I wouldn't help you even if you begged." With that, I left money for the coffee, which hadn't yet been served, on the table and headed for the exit, ignoring Kristen's dramatically loud crying to attract attention and guilt me into returning. I informed the staff that I left the payment on the table and walked out. She probably thought her tears would make me reconsider. No matter how loudly she cried or called out for her sister in a tragic voice, I ignored her and walked away. When I saw her standing up and heading towards me, I hurried to a crowded area, not stopping to see what she might do next. After about an hour of dodging through convenience stores, bookstores, and the shopping mall around the station, and seeing no sign of Kristen, I finally let out a deep breath and headed home. Reaching my 25th floor apartment, I quickly unlocked the door and slid inside, locking it behind me. Then the intercom rang. My intercom rarely rings. I don't use delivery services much, and my neighbors usually call to make an appointment if they need something. In this apartment, where solicitors are scarce, the chime ringing at such a time made my heart race. The intercom rang once, then again, with the intervals between rings getting shorter. It sounded like someone was pressing the button repeatedly, making me brace myself. The intercom monitor was pitch black. Thinking it might be malfunctioning, I leaned in closer, only to realize that the darkness was actually someone's pupils, causing me to instinctively swat it away. In doing so, I accidentally pressed the answer button, and immediately the voice I had been hearing echoed through. "Just pay up, you ugly." It was my sister. Anger surged through me more than fear. I thought I had escaped. "It sounds like you went through an incredibly challenging and emotionally draining situation with your sister. Dealing with family disputes and financial pressures can be incredibly stressful. It's unfortunate that you had to experience this kind of behavior from someone you're related to. It's good to hear that the security personnel were able to handle the situation when your sister showed up at your apartment uninvited. It must have been a relief to know that she was escorted away and didn't return. As for the ongoing disputes between Kristen and Matt, it sounds like a difficult and complicated situation. Family dynamics can be complex, especially when money and legal matters are involved. If you're feeling overwhelmed or need support during this time, it might be helpful to reach out to trusted friends or a counselor. Taking care of your own well-being is important, especially after going through such challenging circumstances. If there's anything else on your mind, or if you want to talk more about this, feel free to share. The story goes like this. Because my parents couldn't keep up with the mortgage payments, the bank took our family home. They had to sell the house to pay off the mortgage. Now they've moved to a less expensive apartment nearby. This sudden change caused stress and tension in our family. Even though my dad's salary is enough for a modest life, they struggled because they got used to the money I used to send them. My mom went back to working part-time, and Kristen found a job again despite having to handle childcare. It's been tough for Kristen, taking care of her child and managing work and home. Thankfully, her child is growing up healthy. I've been trying to help by giving them information about childcare support, even though it might seem like I'm meddling. Meanwhile, my own career is going well. I got a promotion at work and am leading a new project. My side business is also doing great, especially a writing job that turned into a best-selling book. My success has helped my other projects grow too. Overall, even though I'm tired sometimes, Coming back to my comfortable home every day makes me truly happy.